Hey everyone, and welcome to the Active Towns channel. My name is John Zimmerman, and I am in Tucson, Arizona today, and today is Wednesday, April 30th, and I've got some special guests in the, I'm not in my studio, I'm out on the ground, so I'm gonna swing the camera around. Gentlemen, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Collin Chesston. I'm a senior project manager with the City of Tucson.
Fantastic, and?
And I'm Ryan Fagan. I'm a project manager and the Complete Streets program coordinator for the City of Tucson.
Fantastic. Gentlemen, what are we gonna be seeing today?
Yeah, so we're gonna go check out a couple of recently constructed projects and might even get a chance to see some stuff under construction.
Fantastic. All right, let's swing the camera around and go see some stuff.
Interesting. Oh.
You wanted to get a photo of me walking across?
Yes.
Yeah, this is great. I haven't actually walked through this one yet.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen, what did we just see?
So this is a rectangular rapid flash beacon, or an RFB, and it is a pedestrian crossing device. Basically, this is already a legal crosswalk, but what this does is it just makes it more obvious to drivers that they need to stop here. So this was installed here because there was already a lot of pedestrian traffic right in this area crossing the street. There's also a couple of bus stops here, so there's just a natural need for pedestrians to get across depending on whether they're arriving or leaving.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great. All right.
Do you have nerds that watch this? Like,
Oh,
do
yeah,
they care
I do.
about? Okay.
They do.
So,
I totally have nerds that watch this. And by the way, Collin, I just want to say thank you so much for including the mariachi music. This is fantastic.
Absolutely, we plan that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things about Arizona, and Tucson specifically, is that here in the city of Tucson, we invented the Hawk, also known as the pedestrian hybrid beacon. So our city traffic engineer back in the 90s, 80s?
90s.
Was the one who developed the Hawk and got it through the whole Federal Highway Administration MUTCD process, which took 10 years.
Yeah.
So we have not used rectangular rapid flash beacons as often because we typically, our go-to is the Hawk.
Right.
And part of that is because we have really busy road. We have a lot of 5-6 lane, high speed arterials.
Right.
And a pedestrian hybrid beacon, or a Hawk as we call them here,
Yeah.
is the preferred treatment. So we haven't used these as much, but the rectangular rapid flash beacons are appropriate for a lower speed, lower volume street. So, you know, think like 10, 12,000 cars a day, 30 mile an hour speed limit, 3-lane cross section. And so it's perfect application for this, but we've been kind of a slow adopter on these because we've been so focused on the Hawks, and they've worked so well for us in Tucson.
I love that little nugget. That's good stuff. All right. Yay.
Do you want me to just give an overview of the project?
Yeah, let's go ahead and start that.
All right. So this is Silver Bell Road. This is a project that was originally just a repaving project. It was actually planned a long time ago, before we had our current street design guide, before we had funding to supplement paving projects with bicycle and pedestrian improvements the way that we have here. So basically we had this repaving project. It was already under construction when we were approached by a neighborhood and some members of the public asking, are you improving the bike lanes on here? Like, what are you doing in addition to repaving it? And we had an opportunity to very quickly design this sort of quick build protected bike lane here, that RFB back there, several pedestrian crossing islands, and we filled in some gaps in sidewalk on this road. So we made it a more complete street for relatively low investment. And it seems to be working really well. Anecdotally, it's reduced traffic speeds significantly. We hear people saying that they feel much more comfortable biking here with their kids, walking across the street. So it's a little unusual kind of a project. We don't generally have these kinds of opportunities, but it just so happened this was kind of like the perfect opportunity to add some value to that paving project.
Yeah, this is tremendous. I mean, and this is, I think, really appropriate for North American context, very suburban in nature. And even, with trash pickup, you see that this extra wide, buffer that you have, the gore, you're able to have trash pickup staged in that area. This is just beautiful.
Yeah, it seems to be working really well. And this is a relatively low-cost treatment. You can see we're using what are called K71 posts and precast curb segments. They seem to sort of protect each other. When we just have like flexible posts, they often get stuck and damaged. But without something vertical, people aren't as likely to notice and avoid the curb. So the sort of combination, they seem to be working to protect each other.
Yeah, and we just saw a little bit of a challenge there with a bend that got sort of misplaced, but because of quote unquote the forgiving design, there was plenty of place for us to be able to avoid the hazard without at the same time putting ourselves at risk and in danger.
Yeah, and we had the luxury of this being an unusually wide road. This was a 3-lane road before we added all this, but the lanes were just extremely wide, so we really had a lot of room to play with. So the bike lanes and the buffers are wider than we would normally be able to kind of fit into a road like this. So it's really nice. We're riding side by side here, which you can't do in a lot of places.
Yeah, and which to reinforce too, I talk about this on the channel a lot, is riding side by side is absolutely essential. If we want to have an all ages and abilities network, the ability to ride side by side is so important, especially for parents with young children.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yep.
I completely agree.
Fantastic.
So
let's pop to the side here and talk a little bit about this project.
Sure.
Fantastic. Well, we've pulled off, so we have the installation here in the background. Oftentimes, community members are like, "Hey, are you guys going to do something with the street? Is there an opportunity to put a bike lane in?" But on the flip side of that, oftentimes there's also resistance that comes up. How did you all navigate for this project? Bringing that information in, thinking about what the design would be like, and that process of really sort of taking the community members by hand. And oh, by the way, we had a road runner go across the street while we're in the background there. You gotta love the wildlife here. So how did you help that process of bringing the community members along as well?
Sure. The stars kind of aligned with this project. We had recently done a roadway safety assessment that had recommended a number of improvements that we were able to do. But there had also been outreach to the neighborhood, and they had approached us as well, asking us, if we're doing anything else along with the repaving. So we basically took that opportunity to look at the results of the roadway safety assessment, to hear what was being requested and sort of look at what did we have the capacity to do. We have a funding source. We have a sales tax, a portion of which goes to safety improvements, typically bicycle and pedestrian improvements. So we were able to use that funding to basically add protected bike lanes, which had been requested. There were requests to make it more walkable along the street. If you can't really tell here, but one side of this street is essentially a hill that starts right at the curb. We didn't have the ability to regrade that, and that would have been a multi-million-dollar project, but we were able to complete the sidewalk on one side of the street and provide pedestrian refuge islands along the street to allow people to get to and from that sidewalk. So, for the cost of about $600,000, we were really able to make this a much more walkable, much more bikeable street. This is our first use of what are called K71 posts. So these are those white bollards those are essentially a soft plastic. You can deform them by stepping on them with your foot. But they look really substantial. So people tend to avoid them just because they look like something that'll damage your car if you drive into it.
Right.
For a lot less money than it would have cost to do like precast curb, for example, something that's a sort of 100% permanent solution. We sort of did like a hybrid. It's sort of not quite quick build, not quite fully permanent installation here with the K71 posts and the precast curb. And the response we've gotten is really positive. We really haven't heard much negative reaction to it at all. This is really something that people in the area really wanted to see. This is an area that I think is really invested in making their neighborhood more walkable and more bikeable. And so it's just been a really positive, overall, I think.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and you know, I totally missed the fact that there was no sidewalk on this side. And as we can see in the background, we've got a couple of runners that are using the space. I'm sure people who are walking and maybe pushing a baby stroller, you know, they're going to go ahead and use this as well. And that's, you know, very common to see with bicycle infrastructure. And I don't certainly advocate against that, because you know, when there's not you know, an adequate pedestrian facility on this particular side, you use what you have, and if that happens to be, you know, a lightly used bike lane, go for it. You know, Collin, you know, from your perspective across the city, what has this project really shown for you as, and what has you excited about potential other projects across the city?
Yeah. So one of the things Ryan mentioned is that we had this resurfacing project, but then we layered in some additional flexible safety funds. And I think that's been something citywide that we've learned is really helpful for us. Because we've been doing these kind of resurfacing, reconfiguration projects where we're repaving the street already and we want to add bike lanes. We've been doing that for decades. And I think now that we have this extra flexible safety funding, we have the ability to do a little bit more than just paint. So we can add the precast curb, we can add the K71 posts, and that's something that we're doing on other projects throughout the city. So I think for other cities that are interested in this type of thing, having a flexible source of funding that you can add to your resurfacing projects really gives you some additional flexibility to deliver something a little bit better than you would be able to otherwise.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, bravo guys. This is a really wonderful, like you said, you had mentioned it earlier, it is lighter, quicker, cheaper, but oh, there's another Roadrunner right behind. Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. He approves as well. This is Roadrunner approved.
He's not crossing at the official location.
Oh, well, you know, hey, he's a Roadrunner. Just as long as he makes it across safely, and he did. Boom. That's great. We're seeing, you know, in the background here, we're seeing, you know, a pretty good amount of motor vehicle traffic here. And again, we've seen quite a few, you know, people walking, biking, and running through this area. Again, this is a suburban context. This is really, really appropriate for North American realities and all that. As we were rolling, Ryan, you had mentioned that, you know, sort of empirically, we kind of think that it's dropped down the motor vehicle speeds. Were you able to do motor vehicle pre-studies to get any pre-installation data?
Unfortunately, we weren't able to measure the speeds beforehand, because this is a project where the water line was being replaced and then the road was being repaved, and that had already begun before we actually started design work on the bicycle and pedestrian improvements. So unfortunately we weren't able to, but anecdotally we have heard from a bunch of people who live in the area saying that it's just made a huge difference. Yeah. I will say anecdotally for myself, you know, it's a rare street where people seem to be going the speed limit. And I really think that's due to it, you know, the lanes being much narrower, there being this sort of, you know, visual friction on the sides of the lanes with the bollards. And, you know, it would be great to get that data, and on a lot of other projects we have done that. Unfortunately, we just don't have that, but anecdotally it seems to be great.
Yeah, I misspoke. I said empirically. I mean, anecdotally, we feel that the speeds are a little bit more appropriate. Yeah, certainly you can come back and measure it now and get some empirical evidence of the fact that it is working. They're driving closer to the speed limit, which is the whole point, because we want our streets, especially streets that are, you know, surrounded. You've got residents everywhere here. You want this to be a people-oriented place, not a place that's just a traffic sewer. So, yeah, good stuff. Okay, where are we headed to next?
So let's do a U-turn. We'll go up north just for like 2 blocks, and then let's go down Alameda, which is a future bike boulevard. And then that'll take us to the Loop, which is, I don't know, arguably one of our most used pieces of infrastructure. Excellent. And it's nice along the river.
Fantastic. All right.
River.
Let's do it. Yeah, the river. During flood times.
Oh, wow, there's a lot of people running here. That's really cool. And something I've noticed along our bike boulevards, which, you know, we have a lot of neighborhood streets that don't have sidewalks on them, so people are walking them anyway, but you know, as we've added like the hot crossings and other improvements to calm traffic and kind of reduce car traffic on bike boulevards, I personally, I've noticed a lot more people like walking and biking and running along them. So it's not, you know, it's not quite a trail, but it really seems to attract that. And
yeah.
You know, so it's nice to see sort of like, it's nice to see people, you know, finding ways to use it, you know, however they can. You know, it's I'm reaching for a metaphor that I'm not getting. Sorry.
Yeah, I totally get what you mean too. It's what I call creating a culture of activity. You create an environment which really supports that active living, walking, biking, and running, and all these other things, and people just sort of gravitate towards it. So,
yeah. It's sort of like in Jurassic Park. You know, life finds a way.
Exactly.
You know, people wanna run, people wanna be active, and even if you didn't design specifically for that, if it works for that, people use it, and so it's really cool to see people finding all different ways to use this.
Hey, we have a way of making induced demand work for us too. Yeah.
Exactly. I would say it's more latent demand, I think.
Yeah. It is latent demand. And we're inducing its use by creating the environment.
So we added these. This is a treatment that we use in places where we can't put like vertical elements. This is a curve where like big trucks need to get around and they wouldn't be able to. So we've kind of started putting reflective pavement markers in some areas in the buffers between the bike lane and the vehicle lane. You know, it's not the same as, you know, a raised object like what we're seeing here in the buffer, but it seems to be effective in dissuading most drivers from crossing into the buffer, and it provides that tactile feedback.
Yeah.
That, you know, the unfortunate reality is a lot of people aren't paying close attention when they're driving and tend to drift.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if you noticed, but we had another area like that up by the hospital, up where we started.
Yeah, I did notice that, yeah.
And that was, we kind of had a mandate to add a row of parallel parking along that stretch there. There's a very popular hiking trail nearby, and basically like the road fills up with parking. People end up using the hospital parking lot. So we're adding a row of parking, so we couldn't block that parking, and the parking couldn't be detached from the road because then that would have created a site visibility issue. So our solution was essentially to make it a buffered bike lane, buffered from both sides, and add those RPMs in the buffer to
nice. I
provide
love that.
a little bit additional protection.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do is, in advance of all of our bicycle boulevards, we're going through and doing a pavement treatment on our residential streets.
Right.
So this got, you know, some fresh asphalt on top in preparation for some improvements that we have planned.
Yeah.
This is our Menlo Park Bicycle Boulevard, and we're at about the 90% design stage on this.
Nice.
So one of the things that we're really fortunate to have here in Tucson is we passed a bond called Proposition 407 back in 2018, and that approved funding for almost $100 million of active transportation connections to parks.
Fantastic.
And so this is one of those projects that is coming soon.
Yeah, so safe routes to meaningful destinations like parks.
That's right.
Nice.
Yeah, and so we've got an existing pedestrian hybrid beacon, or hawk as we call them here. We're going to be converting that to a bike hawk, and they've already started some of that process as part of the upcoming project. So that'll just make it easier for somebody on a bike to access the push button. They don't have to get off their bike and get up onto the sidewalk, push the button. They'll be able to just roll right up, hit the button, and go through the intersection. The cars will stop for them.
Right. Fantastic. Now, just a quick question. Do you guys have like the Idaho stop or the Colorado safety stop law here in Arizona?
We don't.
Okay.
No.
I usually follow that anyways. Just so you know.
Yeah. No,
I usually keep one eye open on any cross traffic because I literally do hate stop signs. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is something actually that we don't have that law, but when we design bicycle boulevards, we evaluate the traffic control at all the neighborhood intersections, and so where we can, we turn the stop signs, we call it, essentially to provide priority for the bicycle boulevard. So if you're riding on the bike boulevard, so you generally don't have to stop.
So
by design.
Give us 6 months and you won't have that stop sign.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a standard thing we do on all of our bicycle boulevards, and we're riding along one that happens to be funded and in design.
And I love the fact too of like prioritizing access to meaningful destinations, and in my terminology, I call them activity assets. So you have an activity asset to an activity asset like a park or a trail or a greenway.
Nice. let's go through here. We're gonna go up to the loop, which is part of our network of recreational and transportation trails. Although I think most people use them for recreation at this point. But we have over 100 miles of off-street paths that are very well used in Tucson.
I love that. Over 100 miles of off-street
Brian, do you know what our
paths.
current mileage is?
Wow.
It's like 160 or something?
On the loop?
Yeah, on the loop.
You know, I don't know. That's higher than the last figure that I remember seeing, but it's been a while.
Okay, well, it's definitely 100 plus.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just opened a new section about a half mile or so just a few weeks ago, actually.
That's right. Yeah, which is going to connect to one of our bicycle boulevards. And that's the other thing that we're trying to do. So the bicycle boulevard that we were just riding on connects to the loop at this location. It's part of a package of 4 bike boulevards that eventually will connect to this network of off-street paths in 4 different locations. And so we're really trying to connect up, you know, people's houses with the loop, because right now, a lot of times people put their bikes on their cars, drive to a trailhead, and then get on the loop. So we're trying to encourage people to bike to the loop, and in addition to biking on the loop.
Fantastic. Talk a little bit about how this infrastructure is sort of managed and funded. Is this something that's part of the inventory under the transportation group, or is this under somebody else's responsibility?
It is. So Pima County manages the loop, all 150 plus miles of it. And they do a great job with maintenance. You can see there's fresh kind of crack seals here. Part of it is it's also an access road for this drainage channel. And so sometimes they use their pickup trucks to do maintenance on the path.
Right.
At this bridge, we're going to take a right.
Fantastic.
Unfortunately, there's only stairs here, but there is a channel for bikes, so we can roll our bikes up.
Yeah, we'll get a shot of that.
So see, they've carved a little channel here so that you can roll your bike up.
Brilliant.
I should have taken us to the one on the other side, but oh well.
Oh, okay.
The street's not too bad to cross, but we want to go this way.
This is a rather fun bridge.
Yeah, this is cool. Yeah, it's got these shade structures that produce some interesting shadows, give some shade to the pedestrians. It's one of our few bridges over the Santa Cruz River that only has a couple of lanes in each direction and has nice bike lanes, so it's commonly used for people on bikes.
How many miles do you know that the streetcar line
I believe
runs?
the streetcar is 3.9 miles.
Okay, so not particularly extensive.
No, but yeah, so it's about 4 miles from the University of Arizona through downtown to the west side. So it covers some of the most urbanized, densest parts of the city. And especially with the free transit that we have, the fare-free transit, it gets a lot of use.
A good first step.
Yes. Yeah. Right now we're hoping to get a BRT line started.
Okay.
That would eventually make its way down to the airport. That's still in planning, so no funding for that yet, but that's our next step when it comes to mass transit, essentially.
Fantastic.
Do you deal with like transit very much, or is it more like bicycle?
Sure, especially the integration of transit to active mobility, which is essential.
Yeah, actually, we have our first bike lanes that run behind transit stops along the streetcar route.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise you'd be directing bike riders, essentially into the tracks.
Yes.
So that was a key feature at some stations to deal with that. But
I rode on those earlier. Hey there. Hi, guys.
Morning, Mike.
Morning.
So this is part of the El Paso on Southwestern Greenway. This is a rails trails project that was conceived of, I think, more than 15 years ago. There was a master plan put together, and we've kind of completed pieces and sections as we've been able to find funding. And now we have in design essentially the rest of the Greenway. And do you know how long it's going to be in total, Collin?
I want to say 8 miles,
Okay.
connecting downtown out to another section of the loop.
Yeah. And is this also managed by the county, or is this all now city?
This is a city-owned piece of infrastructure. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's wonderful when you are able to identify and leverage these off-street rights of way to activate them into a new purpose. So
Yep, absolutely.
create those connections to the neighborhoods and to meaningful destinations. And yeah, they can serve two purposes, recreation and utilitarian cycling.
Yep, absolutely. Let's take a left here. We'll go down the 18th Street Future Bicycle Boulevard too. This is
All
another
right.
one of our future bike boulevards that's funded through Proposition 407. So part of the way that we try to pick our future bike boulevards is we look at low volume, low speed streets that have good connectivity with the street network and have some existing traffic calming features. So for example, we just went over a speed hump. So we do have a lot of speed humps and traffic circles in our residential neighborhoods in Tucson that the neighborhoods have asked for to slow the cars down. And so that becomes very complementary for our bike boulevard projects, where we're trying to reduce the speed differential between cars and bikes.
Right, right. And really, this is sort of the bike network that's hidden within almost every city, is
Yeah.
that you have these quiet residential streets that, with a little bit of traffic calming, can just be turned into beautiful, comfortable, all ages and abilities facilities.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you know, we've had mapped bike routes that crisscross the city for decades. But you know, they only got so much use because you get to a 6-lane arterial.
Right.
Most people are going to find trying to cross those without any kind of assistance to be a major barrier. So
Right, right.
now that we're transforming a lot of those bike routes into bicycle boulevards, adding that really seems to be greatly increasing the number of people who are using them.
And we'll take you through a couple of different push button crossing treatments that we have for our bicycle boulevards to cross those major streets.
Okay.
One of them, the most common one, is called a bike hawk, which is
Okay.
basically taking the conventional hawk for pedestrians and adding a bike push button and adding some green markings and a short section of two-way bike lane so that people can easily access that push button. The other one's called a toucan. All of our push button crossings are bird names.
Yeah.
Because our city traffic engineer in the 90s that came up with this stuff,
Yeah.
his wife was an avid birder.
Ah, cool.
And so they all have bird names. We have toucans, hawks, pelicans, puffin. Is that all of them?
I think that's all of them, yeah.
I love
And they're
that.
all kind of tortured acronyms.
Yeah. Yeah, I profiled some of the toucans in Fort Collins, Colorado. They've done a really good job of implementing those for the same purpose.
And theirs, I think, are a different style than ours.
Okay, good. Be good to see another.
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways you can implement a sort of toucan
Yeah.
concept.
And again, two can cross,
Exactly.
what we're talking about here.
Yep.
Although, yes, the bird, the toucan, the colorful bird, we like that because that's fun.
That's right.
And riding a bike should be fun. So I see we're rolling into Barrio Santa Rosa here, which is very cool.
Yeah.
What a great entrance to this historic neighborhood, on a little, future bike boulevard. Very cool. And we see Cesar Chavez Avenue, a nice entry there as well.
Yeah, there's
beautiful.
there's an archway entrance to each of the different neighborhoods
Yeah.
at this intersection at 5 points.
That is fantastic.
We're gonna take a left here.
Okay.
We're gonna go on 6th Avenue. And I wanna show you a public art street mural project that we did.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
It's not strictly for bikes,
Yeah.
but complementary.
Well, it's transforming our public environment. You know, as my stickers say, streets are for people. And so what we're trying to do is, you know, really reclaim our streets for what the real purpose is, which is life and vitality and vibrancy. And so, yeah, public art and transforming our public realm so that it invites people, you know, is all the better. So I love that. That's great.
Yeah, one of the cool things about that project too is we had, you know, the artist came in and drew the outlines of all the shapes, and then we had the public come in and actually paint all the insides.
Nice.
So it was a really cool day when we did that all together.
All right,
So
cool.
we're going to turn left here, so this is going to be a little bit of a tricky move.
All right. Cool. Yeah, there's a bit of art right there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the neighborhood I'm staying in too.
Oh, cool.
This is the Armory, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so this is one of our older conventional bike lanes. We got a lot of these too. Unfortunately, we're pretty close to the door zone. So that's one of the things that we're trying to avoid now when we install bike lanes, is trying to keep them out of the door zone. So typically when we have space, we like to have what's called a door zone buffer. And we usually prioritize that over a travel side buffer, which would be between the bikes and the travel lane.
Right.
But it kind of depends on the nature of the street, you know, how fast are the cars going, what's the parking turnover like.
And again, we're dealing with really nice, wide rights of way. So yeah, you've got a nice palette and an opportunity to redefine what the space looks like.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And so a couple blocks over, we have a similar situation. And when we resurface the street, we're gonna retrofit it so that we can add some bike lanes and actually get rid of this center left turn lane. I think back in the 90s or the 2000s, if we did a roadway reallocation or a road diet project, we kind of said, okay, we don't need all these lanes, so what you do with the space? And this was kind of the default was, well, let's add a bike lane in each direction and a center turn lane. And now we're realizing, well, do we really need that center left turn lane in a lot of cases where we don't have high volumes of left turns?
Right.
And so then kind of the second version of the reallocation is to add a buffer to the bike lane. So here's this art project.
Oh, nice.
And we had volunteers come out and paint this after an artist did the shapes. We got planters in there with native plantings.
Yeah, so this is gorgeous. So yeah, you were saying you engaged the public and got them in and helping with this project.
That's right.
Talk a little bit about this particular project from start to finish. You know, when was it conceived and how long did it take to bring this to fruition?
Yeah, so I think it's been in place now for about 1.5 years or 2 years. And it took a little bit of, you know, figuring out what we wanted to do and working with our traffic engineering division to understand what they were comfortable with. For example, the planters. We did a quick analysis to look at whether or not we needed this left turn lane, and we realized we didn't. And so we just thought about how we could reimagine this space and use it for something that would help people get across the street, help people get from the Children's Museum over to Armory Park, which is over here. So I think that all together, I think it was about 1.5 2 year process. We did get a grant from, was it a Bloomberg grant?
I think it was Bloomberg.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well that makes sense. Yeah, the Asphalt for Art, Asphalt Art program and all that.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Yeah,
Yep.
I just recently did an interview with Chelsea Ritter Sorensen from Washington D.C. with Chalk Riot, and that's her business is putting down pavement art like this. Yeah,
Cool.
Especially for traffic calming, which is wonderful. Now I have to comment on that loud car that went by, and one of the common themes on the channel is to reinforce that, cities aren't noisy, cars are noisy, and that's a great, example of that, because we pause and we listen and we can actually hear birds. And so, yeah, it's one of the challenges that we have as we are trying to make more livable environments for our cities is noise, automobile noise.
Yeah.
But this is absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. And yes, the Children's Museum is right there. We've seen a relatively steady stream of folks walking across just randomly. No, there's a crosswalk right there. Talk a little bit about the decision to have to keep curbside parking here. Obviously, there's a traffic calming element to having the parking here, but I could also see a protected bike lane, in this environment as well, to deliver kiddos directly to the museum. I'm sure there was a little bit of discussion, or maybe there wasn't, of whether that was an opportunity to create an all ages and abilities, facility right to the doorstep.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, we think about this a lot in terms of the needs of parked vehicles and trying to meet that demand. I think what we hear from businesses a lot, as I'm sure you've heard from lots of others, is we really value that on-street parking.
Yeah.
And then from a city perspective too, these happen to be metered spaces,
right.
And so those are particularly valued,
yes,
because they are a revenue generator.
Yes.
So yeah, those are a couple of challenges, I think, with reducing our on-street parking, but certainly we have plenty of parking garages downtown,
right.
And I think long-term it'd be great to shift more towards those garages and make the streets more walkable, livable, bikeable places.
And we see in the background here, there's still some angled parking on that block, and so, yeah, certainly, the coveted spot right in front of the Children's Museum is like the best spot. Oh my gosh, I got the best spot. Do you know if your parking is dynamically priced to really sort of lean into the Chesston, concept of making sure that you've got at least 15% of your spots available at all times?
It is not.
Okay.
But we should look into that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we very shortly we will be expanding the hours and days that metered parking is charged in the downtown area, which has kind of been a long time coming.
Into the evenings now, instead of ending at 5, it's going to end at 7.
Yeah, and Saturdays will be pay as well. So, it used to be that, there'd be cars roaming around trying to find, a free parking spot after 5 o'clock, and, there's garages, there's other lots everywhere, but everybody wants to find, that free street parking spot. So, it's nice that we're finally acknowledging that there is demand, that it actually is good for businesses, because you're not going to have people park there to go see a show necessarily.
Yeah.
And get free parking there. You can actually have turnover and have opportunities for people to park and patronize businesses.
And Collin, you addressed one of the challenges, of course, is that, yes, we want our curbside parking to have some sort of cost associated with it in most circumstances, and so having metered parking is very appropriate. But when it comes to transforming that space into a different use, if it's already revenue generating, that's a hard decision to make, because it's like, oh wait, but that's funding some really cool stuff, or hopefully it's funding some really cool stuff and not just going into the general fund. But yeah, that is one of the stresses and challenges of dealing with that. And for folks who are wondering what I meant when I said Chesston, I was obviously referring to the late great Donald Shoup, and if you'd like to learn more about that, be sure to click on my interview with Donald that I recorded in December, just before his passing, a few weeks before he passed in January. This is wonderful, guys. I absolutely love this, and like with most things in the built environment, it's never actually ever perfect, and so there's always opportunities to be able to fine-tune and make it better. If you were to wave a magic wand, Collin, what would you do differently about this?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I'd love to see a protected bike lane here. I'd love to see permanent infrastructure here. I'd like to see raised curbs and permanent planting, street trees for shade. Those would all be really nice things to have in the future.
One of the things that I think of when I think of an environment where I've got a park across the street, I've got this museum right over here, is that opportunity of being able to say, is this a potential car-free zone? Could this be, turned into a plaza that either doesn't allow any cars to pass through, or if it does, they pass through at 15 miles per hour, and it's a rather obvious Woonerf type of situation, or for my Dutch, the Woonerf type of situation. Because again, we've got a park on one side and a museum on the other side. It's like, well, maybe that's a pedestrian priority zone.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that, gentlemen?
What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
You're on the spot.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I'm not good when I'm on the spot.
Don't make this a war on cars, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of tension because, it doesn't look like it, but this is an arterial road. That's how it's classified here at the city, and it is considered to be, one of the major routes in and out of downtown. So, it wouldn't be something we take lightly. I don't think we've pedestrianized any streets. It's certainly something that's been discussed in some of the, more pedestrian trafficked areas of downtown. But yeah, I mean, I think this context is perfect for something like that. You can see most cars are actually driving pretty slowly already. It's not like it would be that different if it were to be, a slow zone essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you mentioned, Collin, being able to raise it up a little bit more and really send a clear message that, maybe it's not anti-car or a car-free zone, but maybe it's a truly a slow zone that's a wide, welcoming shared space that really sends that message to drivers that, hey, this is not a through zone. This is not a traffic sewer through here.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I'll say I've seen a couple of examples of curbless streets.
Exactly, yeah.
Which I think is maybe what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So when I was in Detroit last year for the Association of Bicycle and Pedestrian Professionals Conference, we went on a tour and we saw an example of a commercial district curbless street, and it was really cool. And it did feel like the cars were guests, like a Woonerf.
Yeah, yeah. I can think of another one too. Dover Coal Project on Clematis Street in West Palm Beach, Florida. Same thing. Cars are still allowed. There is still some car parking in that area, but it's a curbless environment. It's clearly a pedestrian first realm, and everyone's welcome, but it is a slow street zone. Good stuff. Okay, what are we gonna go see next?
Let's go check out Stone.
All right, let's do it.
That's my favorite recent project.
All right, cool. Let's do it.
Just one other note about this street. This has our highest use bus route in town, and this is actually where we are long-term planning to put high-capacity transit down this route as well. So,
I'm glad you mentioned that too, because we do have a bus, going through this space here, and so that does remind me of another cool project that took place in a low-traffic neighborhood in London, in the Waltham Forest area. It's Orford Street, and it's a one-way street, but it's a transit street, and so the transit, the buses will be going through relatively frequently, but pretty much when the buses aren't there, people just take over. And so it's a walking and biking zone, and in the week that I stayed there in London, I went back there every single night because it was so delightful, because it just was turned over to people, even though it was still a priority transit zone. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, thanks. That sounds kind of like the Nicollet Mall in Minneapolis, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Although that's a little more sterile, I think, than probably.
Yeah. And 16th Street in Denver, same thing with the shuttle buses that run up and down 16th Street. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, Ryan, I'm going to put you on the spot, just for the heck of it, because we have bike share. We're still here in front of the museum and at the park, and near the transit stop here. This is the Armory Park transit stop, but we see bike shares. You guys have bike share in the city. That's fantastic.
We do, yeah. It's called To Go Bike Share. We've had it since, I want to say 2017, maybe 2018, so about 7 years. It is a dock system. It is mostly around downtown University area. So, that same area, the streetcar area, the area that's the densest, that sort of has the most walkability. A lot of other cities have dropped their bike share programs. A lot of it has just gone to scooters. We do have a dockless scooter company that operates here. But we consider this to be, a piece of the transit puzzle here in the city. Essentially, it's really good for last mile trips. I know Collin has used it to bike to the gym. He lives near the U of A Rec Center.
Ah, fantastic!
So it's, I don't.
Yeah, I use bike share for one specific trip.
Yeah.
Where it takes me slightly longer to get my own bike out of my shipping container in my backyard,
Yeah,
unlock it, get my lock, get all my stuff.
Yeah.
And with bike share, I just don't have to think about it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I just get out.
And it's a short trip. And is there a docking station right where you'd go and do your workout?
Exactly.
Perfect. Yeah.
So it's for some trips, it works really well.
Yeah.
But for most trips, I still use my own personal bike.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or one of them.
So Collin, we're at a slightly different angle here looking back on this intersection, and we see that it also has some traffic calming elements to it, including the bulb outs here at the curves and some of the creative painting. But I also want to ask, I'm going to put you on the spot here as well.
Sure.
What's up with this teal line? What's this all about?
Oh yeah. So this teal line on the sidewalks is a guided tour through downtown, and it takes you to some of the interesting points of interest, historic and cultural areas in downtown Tucson.
Fabulous.
Yeah, it's called the Turquoise Trail.
The Turquoise Trail.
Turquoise Trail.
So it's
Thank you.
turquoise. It's not teal. Very good. Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, of course, we're in the Southwest. Of course, it's turquoise.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of in the spirit of a little bit of Indianapolis's cultural trail. This will help you follow the turquoise, and you can see some of the cultural elements of the city. I love it. And again, we are in one of the historic districts. This particular district is the...
I think this is Armory Park.
Yeah, this is Armory Park, yeah. Historic district. That's where I'm staying. Fantastic.
One also just interesting urban planning tidbit is we have an ordinance in Tucson that requires these historic neon signs to be maintained, and there's a lot of really cool old, like mid-century signs like this one. This is one of my favorite with the the woman, she's about to dive into the swimming pool. So yeah, those are protected here in the city, and I think we won like a American Planning Association ordinance award for that.
Yeah.
That I don't know.
Yeah.
I would hazard a guess that is the case. That's fantastic. Love this narrow little street here that we're on. The whole network of little narrow streets here in this neighborhood.
Yeah, that's Scott Avenue, and that was one of our Complete Streets projects that we did maybe 10 years ago.
Well, more than that, more like 15 or more.
15?
Yeah.
Okay. Before my time.
Yeah, it's got some really nice public art as well. It's got a giant red statue, metal griffin with a glowing heart that lights up at night.
Felipe!
Felipe.
Good morning. Felipe works for Kittleson.
Oh, cool.
So one of our project managers, and we're working with him on a
Nice.
few. In fact, we're going to go see some in-construction stuff that he designed.
Ah,
So that'll be
fabulous.
fun. Oh yeah, we're good.
Good.
So there's red lights, but we've got bike signals.
Ah, yes.
So this is a two-way separated bike lane on a one-way street downtown. And
Lovely.
we reconfigured this. It varies by block, but we removed one of the travel lanes in a couple of the blocks. And then in other cases, we were able to just narrow everything up to achieve the right dimensions.
Right.
And you'll see we've got green stormwater infrastructure here
Right.
that's harvesting rainwater. Of course, we live in the desert. We only get about 11 inches of rainfall per year. So every drop is precious, and we're, with this project, trying to direct all that stormwater to these islands that are depressed, with depressed basins.
I'm really
Let's stop-
glad you
let's
mentioned
pause,
that.
Let's pause right here,
Yeah.
just because I don't want to miss this detail.
All right, Collin, you are like grinning ear to ear. Tell me why.
Okay, so this is our very first in the city of Tucson pedestrian scale 4-inch diameter bike signal head.
Ah, yes.
So you see these in Europe and Amsterdam, all over the place, and
Yeah.
this is the first time that we're using them.
Yeah.
This was a sample that we got, and so this is the only one we've installed so far.
Okay.
But we're installing 8 of them on this project overall.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And so you can see they're mounted a little bit lower. They're
Right.
more of a pedestrian scale. It's intended to be kind of in advance of the far side bike signal.
Right.
You also get a near side.
Fantastic. Since this is the sample, does it include like a little countdown? Will it give a visual countdown like the ones in the Netherlands?
It will not.
Okay.
So that specific model is not yet approved by the Federal Highway Administration.
Sure,
so
sure.
the countdown timer is, we don't have a US spec version for that yet.
Yeah.
They installed some in Portland that they imported.
Peter Kuntz is very excited about the ones that have been installed in Portland.
That Peter Kuntz, he's always up to something.
He's always up to something, yeah.
Always
and I think
good.
those might have the countdown, so they might be,
They do.
They may have that, what is it, a waiver or?
It's a circular kind of dial around the outside of the
I mean
lens.
the process, so what is that, a waiver or a?
Request to experiment?
Yeah, experiment,
Yes.
with the MUTCD to be able to try it.
Yes,
Yeah.
so, and Peter is a very smart guy who,
Yeah.
I got to know well when I lived in Portland.
Yeah.
And really respect him. And he has really good engineering judgment, and
Yeah.
he's confident, and so he's decided that when he wants to try something and it makes sense, he goes for it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's awesome.
Yeah. It's one of the great lessons that we have here in the United States is that just because it's not quote unquote covered in any of our manuals, if you use your engineering judgment and move forward and document, and you can get the ability to trial stuff and be able to do it, even though it's quote unquote not in the MUTCD yet.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But these,
Beautiful.
MUTCD approved. Anybody can use these.
Nice.
So-
I love it.
Yeah, we've got 7 more of them coming.
Okay, all right. I see why you're so excited. And Colin, how long has this project been in place?
Just since the end of last year. We wrapped it up in December.
Fantastic.
Last year. So yeah, it's pretty new. And this is another one where we had money to do the resurfacing.
Right.
And we layered in some additional of our flexible safety money
Right.
to get this done. To add some of the raised elements, the raised curbs, the plantings. As I said, we partnered with Tucson Water that does our water harvesting to do these beautiful islands with native Sonoran Desert landscaping.
Such an important part, having that go, and very good.
Yeah, so this section of the project was actually completed, I think, back in 2012. So this 2-block section was a proof of concept. Just to we didn't have any 2-way protected bike lanes at the time, and we said, well, let's try it and see how it goes.
Yeah.
It didn't really connect to anything.
Yeah.
And so when we had an opportunity to resurface further south, we said, well, let's see if we can extend the project.
Yeah. I love the tree canopy here. The beautiful flowers are in bloom.
Yeah.
Don't let those get you though. There's thorns on that plant.
Yeah, Tucson feels like a whole different city when the Palo Verdes are blooming.
Yeah.
We're gonna turn right here.
Fabulous.
So right now that project just kind of comes to an abrupt halt,
Sure.
but we're working to connect it in the next 9 months to a year to a new bridge project that's gonna go, basically we're building a new road that's gonna go underground, but there'll be a bicycle and pedestrian bridge that goes over top of it.
Okay.
And that's gonna connect to one of our new bike boulevards that goes north. So
Fabulous. Well, congratulations. That's a nice project to have in place. Again, proof of concept, since you hadn't really done one of those yet. Love the fact that you were able to preserve some of the on-street parking so that it was also a parking protected facility as well.
Yep. Yeah, that's more of our metered parking downtown that our parking department really wanted to keep that parking in place.
Yeah. And
we
speak
worked
of
really
art,
hard.
we've got some nice art behind us here.
Yeah, they just finished that a couple months ago.
Fantastic.
Beautiful.
Nice pop of color. And it looks like we're sort of traveling on a sort of older version of just sort of a bike priority street.
Yeah, this is one where in the future we'd love to have a 2-way separated bike lane, and we did a study to look at a concept for that. We don't have any funding to do it at the moment, but it is something we'd love to do. We don't have a lot of east-west, low-stress infrastructure downtown.
Yeah.
So for now, we've got to mix with cars.
Yeah.
We're gonna make a left here on
Okay.
this ramp.
So that was all. That was a cool little, you know, diversion we did there. We had that little Moldo filter that we were able to do. We got off on an off-street network of pathways, and then dropped right back into here.
Yeah. Yeah,
Those darn bikes, they can go anywhere.
Yeah, that just makes it a little easier to deal with that challenging intersection and the streetcar.
Can we pull over and talk about this real quick?
Yeah,
I love this.
it's beautiful.
All right, Colin and Ryan, thank you so much for indulging me here. I had us pull off so that we could take a look at this really cool bit of infrastructure. I love this. This is so cool. So many streets, especially in residential areas and mixed areas here. We've got some single family houses and some converted houses into offices. We got some apartments right here. We've got the downtown high rises in the distance there. So many places in North America where we have these transition zones and mixed zones. We have overly wide streets and intersections, and the opportunity to do something creative like this, which is good for so many different reasons. There's some depaving that happened here. Again, we were going back to the stormwater management that we had talked about earlier. How cool is this? Is this a particular type of program within the city for these types of traffic calming type traffic circles?
It is. And so this is actually a combination of two things going on. One is this is part of our 9th Street Bicycle Boulevard, where we try to incorporate traffic calming. But the cool thing about this is this traffic circle actually predates anything that we did officially as a city.
Right.
This was all driven by the neighborhood. So
Nice.
the neighborhood wanted traffic calming. They submitted an application, and they actually paid to get this done. So this is part of our
Fantastic.
neighborhood traffic management program.
Okay.
In TMP, and any of the neighborhoods can submit an application to get traffic calming like this installed. We work with them and get it designed. We obviously make sure that large vehicles like a fire truck can still access the neighborhoods. But the neighborhood did all the landscaping. They picked out all these plants. They do the watering themselves, and I think they really have kind of adopted this and really love the new feature that they've created.
I love this. This is so cool. And again, I had this discussion the other day in Austin where there's a couple neighborhoods where you'll literally see a live oak in the middle of the street as traffic calming. And it's now 20, 30, 40 years old now. And you're like, yes, more street trees literally in the middle of streets. What a great way to slow traffic down. In that case, the vertical element, which is a little different than this, not hugely vertical here, but when you do have a tree or large rocks in the middle of a street of part of a street calming effect, it really disrupts that visual, that straight on visual that motor vehicle drivers have, which really encourages them to speed up and drive faster.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we try to get trees in wherever we can. In this case, we have a sewer manhole.
Okay.
And so we have to be a certain distance offset. So what we've tried to do as a creative solution to this regulation that we can't have the roots disrupting the sewer valve, the sewer pipes, which we understand.
Yeah.
We've tried to plant some things that do have some vertical height, but don't have a deep root structure. So these are called ocotillo. This is a Sonoran desert plant that's a succulent. Right now it's just starting to flower. You can see the orange flowers on top of it. But it's thorny. It's a very distinctive type of plant. But those and also saguaro cactus have shallow root systems, but some visual presence and verticality to them.
Yeah, again, leaning into that xeriscaping model of put stuff in that's drought tolerant, that's native and indigenous to the area, and make it beautiful. Love it. So cool. Hey, thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of my on-bike interview in Tucson, Arizona with Collin and Ryan. And if you did, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and share it with a friend. And if you haven't done so already, I'd be honored to have you subscribe to the channel. Just click on the subscription button down below and ring that notifications bell. In part 2, we're going to be looking at some more traffic calming elements, including a brand new traffic calming circle being built, as well as a couple of bike hawk signals. And if you're enjoying this content here on the Active Towns channel, please consider supporting my efforts by becoming an Active Towns ambassador. Super easy to do. You can just click on the join button right here in YouTube, as well as leave a YouTube super thanks, or you can navigate over to activetowns.org, click on the support tab at the top of the page. There's several different options there, including making a donation to the nonprofit. You can buy me a coffee, as well as become a Patreon supporter. Patrons do get early and ad-free access to all my video content. And this is a good time to give a huge shout out to all my Active Towns ambassadors supporting the channel financially. I simply could not do this without you. Again, thank you all so very much. Well, that's all for now, folks. So until next time, this is John signing off by wishing you much activity, health, and happiness. Cheers.